sindam okita sindanawa kagi kikituat me pivech kinap kabininin.
Thank you. Thank you, Stella. Very proud mother. Very proud grandmother, Kokum, and she also has some chapans. Thank you, Stella. I'd also like to call up my friend Ted Strongquill, come and make some comments. And as he makes his way up here, you'll notice and you have noticed that the language is being spoken both by fellow residential school survivors, but by myself also. We had all been brainwashed into believing that we had lost our languages. And we understand that sometimes we can't communicate with the young people with those languages. But it's important that we educate the public of how important they are in maintaining our survival. With that in mind, I'd like to turn it over to my friend Ted Strongquill.
Koego kini no kinaganim kunem ma itikai ukima kanak maga mindaga kuin wege kyo gema abajuit dio kanaga kwategin kobion to sit wege ga bismina kisi tigeat we ma age gi no ma age tani no kiki to ne nyok wege anak piaganak we nandok Kawichi going goma ani manongom kinage go guys wa manta mango manongom apache kutno gi nan ta men manongom ke go ma ga wi te tamang o wete isa cho go ma kita cho o go nai kana ga gim tiga te gen was mena ne mitina api no chiak chanis na be ga ni kita se ma o ma kita na ma ka na ni ke magi no tam te jin ta wege tamigo ga gi ma kanwet ni ma e sing ma ni sa jo ma gi agi ta jo ma ka gi ken ta jimen wenen anin kut no te je lo ge go ta to ta ma yo ni ken ta wan da go we ni sa jo we ge agi ta jo ma gam kon da yo ni ken ta wan da me o ja ni yo gi ta bi Asa, kina tio ka me gon ge o jitto na, ana me ka me gon ge, we. Me ka te ka ne ka sa, ki pe ai sa o. We, or tale ga eta me ma viet no. Ni ma ga ji ma ga. Ni ma ni. Ki ma mi no at. Anis na be. Waps ki. We ge me ka te ka ne kina. Mi ma ga be o be na ma to ma. We kina tio ka me gon si go. Siwa na mea kam ngon, na mi ma apinochiak, mi ma ki so ki na ito ma kan sutte in skone ganan. Pigo skone ganan we, pigo skia in skone ganan. Anin kamp sigia yas non. Mita sa asigi anok ki ge. Mi go e, ka yo ki ma wa ke we ti so wa banu. Na me se go no kom ma. Ki to an mi ni. Top school gano to tamo goe kagi no ni ken ton to we ni sa jo me anis kai ken ta simen uske baby sakita de ma oke ni ma in siona chin to mi ma no me se ko no go ma ini na je skip to an gano to tamo no go ma tamno kana ko no se chikan de ma when the been got now, me ma ge go go together. Because Samana and it's not your need can at all. Because me the guys you got get to it, me also. What's me? Good dog, a kid got the sit on me also make me a me a pea. It's in the coil of me to guys you can't come out. The music no go ma, any, but no take them all. Go go chicken. We go to stay on and it got because it's going to chicken ma you know. Why guys in Sunday in Spanigan and me ma you know. You know, some ma we sang it all. And it's a snappy one, he cannot all. He go, you know, cheer, baby, so who's going away. Then away, Mark and Annie, ma. He has a gift now. The way I can tell me, oh, give my gun with ma. Keeseekoose, me away, and it can't take away, it's going on. Me away. He mark it, he sings. Miss, oh, me away, so go get in a mark. Mark, I've been out. She won't need it, me ma. Me ma, me now, got the Simana, and it, yappy. The voice chicken. Kira go ma, the same of Mano. I've seen guys in an hour, ma, you know. We man of Kama, we know it, ma. Go ma, wait a sit among, Kama, to sit among a man of them. Where my joy commit. Kagisi can help me go, can help me going. Where cannot you come going? Where me, where it is. You may take up an up kitchen to get in it. Ni ma, get ma, each year, ni ma. It does so, kid. Ni ma. It can done where they again is a young biggie or near market on his. Yeah. But they are his cap can get in or Manitoba in or near the in on his seat of can't get in or dice chicken. But that's a basic on me, me, can come out where cannot you come on where make a tail canary. Me, oh, me guys, you can magic and off me go, or magic and off me going. We have been ocean, Kagin, Shonachot, by Kitwat. The me mago. So go no ma, come kick out any again where I want I can where needs a Jew, so go ma eat a Jew. We have been ocean. And the me magic came down. Can we when ma and I asked one, then we just come kick out again where. You know, you came down when in Marminic was I in Kazwat. Men to go see a man in I know, man, he said you. Ah, the no Margaret, how me go again is easy or my guys you can know. Well, it is why we need a six kit to one, go eat star, ma, wake in ma. When he's a son is snap and suck my guy or you know, you eat it them in where no gum. Where no gum, my guy is it again, my gabinago. Oh, where? We go chicken. Oh, the no Margaret, can I get an phone and my guy, how me communicate it to one?
Thank you, Mr. Hi, Ted. You know, for many that are just learning the language, and you have these four, we have one to come. When they have this moment, when Ted said, this is a historical day, and you get texts from people who are on the agenda to move the program along, it just reveals how out of touch some people are. Because these four people who are coming up, and we have one left, our days are numbered. We all know we have more yesterdays than tomorrows. And out of the 150,000 people that accepted a common experience payment some years ago, the estimate is there's only 45,000 of us left. So when our people have this opportunity on such a historic day to express themselves in English and in their language, I ask all observers, all of our allies that are of non-indigenous ancestry, stop and listen to yourself. An opportunity for all of us to learn, an opportunity for you to learn, and to not be controlled by that clock. If you have to go and you have another appointment, we'll see you later. This exercise we're going through is the importance of bearing witness. The historical event has been put on the back burners for years and years and years. I know for me, all of my lifetime, and for many of you, because I know some of my buddies are in this room. So please keep that in mind if you're representing an agency. There's a time when that clock doesn't control you. We're now in a position where we control our own destinies. With that, I'd like to call up my friend, fellow residential school survivor, knowledge keeper, Sarah Jana.
Ichinanakatama, Kakichimikwan, Tapikitang Kanin. I'm very thankful that I was asked to come and speak here today also. Kitan mi kun nimkina, dinay makanitok, biotek, kina, apinochiak, o says sinanik. Tam ka machianam tuano kagi mam kaunda kagi mam kamwat kagi ayasigang ko pinochia kagi nigo kinumati o kamo kong giza tumaga ki anine to kagi ay sewat Kanda kenta jinka nanis mangia ya si tas untuk taga kano ya kagi gituat asikot nung dinentam higit magi ni min tinoy makan itok meninu kagi kino mati mo kamugong magagi sawat kino Din sinabi anis kainin man don't say. Ichini ni dinay makanak. I think a lot of my relatives, I feel for all of the people that went to school here. I didn't get an opportunity to go to school here because we weren't treated at the time. And I guess now I am very thankful for that. Our mother didn't go to school, but our dad did. He went to Brandon, Manitoba, and he went there for 7-8 years, and he come home deaf. He married a lady from Cody, and she died. Then later he met our mother. And because his dad signed him off the reserve before they left, he was in treaty. And then when our parents got married, our mother lost her treaty rights. Giyit nung ute na sige ayamin. Kigagimi ate ito kung anin kibi sa at ko ete kibi mo ko kitas ko kage kung gikenda sinya pi kagi sigite mainta ya pinochio tini nani siya pi. We lived in a little town north here. It was called White Beach, north of Erin. And some of our relatives used to come running away. When they ran away from school, they came to our place. And they used to come and find them, the priest and the police or whoever came and found them. I didn't know anything at that time of how they were treated because I was a little kid also at that time. But I used to see my parents and grandparents, my uncles and aunties. Some of them would have a party or something, and then they'd be crying. And that's the only time, a lot of times, that I heard about what happened. Like I said, at that time, I didn't know. I was just a kid, but now that I grown up, I know what happened. And I know I didn't have anything to do with it, but I apologize to all of you. Iti makini min nimap ti ikintan sigo ganiga I tuta ko ik. I know now what happened to you, and I'm very sorry, deeply sorry. I think I think of my kids, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren. When I read about those. Ted is my cousin. His dad and my mom were brother and sister. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, for supporting this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Cuthbert. And thank you, Ted. Sarah, you have no reason to apologize. And to my fellow survivors out there, you have no reason to apologize. We did nothing wrong. We didn't know what we didn't know. We don't have to apologize to no one. I ask my fellow survivors, don't apologize anymore. We didn't understand shame. We didn't understand blameless shame. And we just didn't know. We made mistakes, we all did. We just want to recover, reprogram ourselves based on our ways, our teachings, our learnings. We don't have to adhere to that outside society anymore. I wear this white shirt today to remind me of my first communion, where I had a little bow tie and a white shirt. And I cover it up today with an orange t-shirt with the image of a buffalo. I'm a buffalo person. I don't want to have any part of that horrible experience we all shared. Everything we do is symbolic. And one thing we don't have to do is apologize. Do not apologize. We did nothing wrong. We'll now go into the part of the program where there will be responses from the various departments that are partnering with us and that we work with. And today, I have the great honor of introducing our first response. And it comes from one of our own people, who's a Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, representing our relationship with the Crown and our treaty relationship. He is also a fellow residential school survivor. And when the invitations went out for this historic event today, the first one went to him. And the first one to respond was him. I'm greatly honored today to call him up and recognize his wonderful wife, Donna, Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, one of our very own, and I'm very proud of him. Let's give him a nice Keeseekoose welcome, Mr. Lieutenant Governor Russell Moraski.
Aino ako antik, tutimitik. Kitieg. Unigani Ogimahan. Uskay meno tarapitsik. Kilo tarapi amopik. Kita tamaskat na ora kidonots gagisra. No nas ko mami na Ted gagi piwi same ko akni de dona, tapiwi tat metahanots. Dan toch de magia. De pitoa hawaii so go get care and Oscar big squitchik. Nistan na ask one game me to go and the big school near the way when you wait no hotchi. Madudihtin managa, toptamagian, gan tohtaoga, gitia, gusto pigiskuan o yabitit mitsemenaho. Imidatsig uskaya, gusto, gita kui mitsemenaho, pigiskuan o. Kaya min o te watagan tohtamagit, sige, kung min naskumog, tatamiskat na, gisto, watagot sige, pin tohtamagi, ganos. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, elders, chief, counselors, knowledge keepers, and of course, survivors. It's truly an honor for me to be here today as a Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, but also as a residential school survivor, second generation. To be here to listen, to learn, to acknowledge, and to share your pain. It's important that we have this opportunity to share the knowledge that exists, to write the history that's been written about this country of ours. And it's important to acknowledge the courage of those that are willing to stand up here and have in the past to share their stories, to inform us so that we know the truth. Because it's been said many times before, without the truth, there is no way forward. You know, I stand here before you as a Lieutenant Governor, but also as the Queen's representative. And I do appreciate that relationship that exists, particularly when I look across the room and see the Treaty Commissioner Culbertson sitting here and listening as well and participating. It was a struggle for me to decide whether or not to accept this role, but it's a little off topic, but really it is about that relationship, acknowledging that relationship with the Crown and what it means, but also the history that came with that. But what I do appreciate, and it's been mentioned here, is that Elder is encouraging us to look forward, not to forget the pain, but to acknowledge it and to learn from it and to create a better place for our children and those yet unborn. So I'll end it there, knowing that there's lots of speakers who want to share with you some words. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here, to share a few thoughts. And as I said, to learn. And I encourage everybody that's listening, not only in this room, but elsewhere, and all Canadians, to open your mind of ours that we call Canada. With that, thank you. Thank you to the elders, to the leaders. Have a good day.
Hey, Russell, this is where it gets a little tricky. This is where COVID and the COVID rules take over. We'll be going to Zoom. And our first person is supposed to be our national chief, the first woman chief in the history of our national organization, Roseanne Archibald. Oh, here she is. Good to see you, Chief.
Maite.
Nice round of applause for our national chief.
Wachian this way, Roseanne Archibald, Mitishnikassan, Dagbadag Moshkata. Hi, everyone. First, I want to acknowledge the Creator, the world around us, and our place within it. I'm coming to you today from the traditional, unsurrendered, unceded territories of Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish nations. Miigwech, Eugene, Arcand for leading us in this very difficult ceremony today, and this reporting that you're doing. It's such a difficult space that we all find ourselves in every time we make these recoveries, so miigwech for that. Also want to thank the Keeseekoose singers for the flag song and the honor song, and as well as Ted Kwesans for his presentation. I particularly would like to say chimiigwech to Keeseekoose First Nation Chief Lee Kitchemonia for the invitation. We did have a conversation about this last week, and so I'm very, very glad I'm here today to share this moment with you, to share prayers with you, to hold this space for healing with you. I also want to acknowledge FSIN and AFN Regional Chief Bobby Cameron, who's on the call or there and presently. And thank you to the Lieutenant Governor, Honorable Russ Marasti, for his words. And certainly want to acknowledge that Minister Mark Miller is here as well. But most importantly, I want to acknowledge the survivors who are joining in person, and all of the survivors who are watching online, all of the intergenerational trauma survivors as well, of which I am one. Both of my parents and many of my older siblings attended what I call the institutions of assimilation and genocide. And I also want to share that Dr. Pam Toulouse, who is an Anishinaabe scholar, said that 100% of First Nations people suffer from intergenerational trauma, 100%. And it's a result of colonialism. However, the majority comes from these institutions. And I want to say that there are children who never made it home, particularly the 54 little ones that we are holding space for today. They are among the thousands of our little ones who didn't make it home. These institutions, I don't call them schools anymore. I did attend schools in municipalities across Ontario, and not one of those schools had unmarked graves with children in them, not one. And so these residential institutions of assimilation and genocide tore apart our families. They tore at the very social fabric of our communities and our nations. And when they did not return home, that left such a deep wound for families. So we're talking about up to 54 families that were impacted by these little ones not returning home. And that's what we have to talk about every time we make a recovery, is we have to help people understand that these institutions had a specific purpose. And it wasn't a benevolent one. It wasn't with good intentions. It was an attempt to remove our language, our cultures, our family connections. And it is what we're seeing in terms of fallout across the nations we have in Canada, or Turtle Island, I prefer to say, are the result of this ongoing colonial process, of which these institutions were a big part. And so I did hear a couple of the speakers say that they knew about this. We always knew what was happening in these institutions. And one of the survivors said, we just weren't believed. And so when we make these recoveries, that's proof. That's long overdue proof that genocide has occurred in Canada. And what's really difficult about this is that the recovery of our children is just beginning. We are at the beginning of over 130 institutions across Canada. And I want to tell all the First Nations in Saskatchewan and across Turtle Island that as National Chief, I stand with you as you work to bring these little ones home, identifying them, giving them names, giving them proper ceremony. These are things that we need to do. And we also have to hold the governments to account, the government of Canada particularly, and the churches. This is the shared history of this country. This is the truth. And that is what I feel is coming into the light, is the truth of Canada. Canada is not a friendly, just, and fair society. We're seeing this as we move along, not only back then, but today. We're seeing evidence of the injustice and inequality, the way our people are treated, for example, in the protests that are happening right now, versus how non-Indigenous people are treated. The myth of Canada, I heard somebody else say that, has to be rewritten. And it can only be rewritten if we take a journey together. And that journey has to be a healing journey. And a healing journey that I'm calling the healing path forward. And the healing path forward is actually, number one, we have to acknowledge that there has to be truth before reconciliation. That's one of the main tenets. The other part of the healing path forward is not about just saying, okay, we're gonna leave this behind now. No, the healing path forward is about accountability. If these were 54 non-Indigenous white children, the RCMP and other authorities would descend upon these sites and begin investigations. These are crime scenes. That's what they are. You don't bury a child without a proper ceremony. You certainly don't bury them in secret. Every single government and person in Canada has the responsibility to influence meaningful and positive change in order for us to move forward. We have to talk about our true shared history and commit to doing better. Sorry, I'm in the city. The government of Canada has to acknowledge that these institutions, the survivors, the intergenerational trauma survivors, require assistance. And not just the announcement that they made last year, which is to help us do these ground penetrating radars, but to fund a national healing fund of some kind. I've been talking about this since I became the national chief. We need not only a healing fund for First Nations, but we need it for Canadians. Many of our allies out there have said to me how devastated they are every time we make these recoveries. They want healing as well. They need healing as well. Just letting the ambulance pass by there. All levels of government have to work with urgency and together with First Nations to rebuild, to recover, and to heal. We need to see real action. And we need to see some kind of process. Every time we recover our children, what do? We can't just do a press conference and talk about it. We need action by the government. You know, I've asked actually that every time we make a recovery that they lower the flags again in honor of these little ones. You know, we need to see actions that show the recognition of the horrors that our people have gone through and continue to go through today. So I invite all of our allies, non-Indigenous Canadians, to stand with us, to listen, to learn, to reflect on this shared history. The more we know about where we come from and our responsibilities, the better we can address where we are today and find this healing path forward. I want to say that the courage of the survivors who shared their truth and shared their stories is so commendable. But let's also talk about the communities in mourning. Let's also talk about where we need to go as a country to heal the wounds created by genocide on our people through our children and families. Let's talk about how the systems and approaches led to residential institution that remain today entrenched in our systems, designed to hold our people back. I've heard someone say the Indian Act. Most of all, let's talk about the healing path forward as a people and all across Turtle Islands. It's time for healing. So Ninanaskawin for inviting me. Ninanaskawin in my language means I'm grateful, I'm thankful, I thank you, and Kisakitin, which means I love you.
Hey. National Chief Roseanne Archibald, thank you for your participation today and also for being part of an observer of the rest of the program. We greatly appreciate it and wish you safe travels as you travel to Turtle Island and try and maneuver your way around all those big trucks downtown Ottawa. Oh, we just heard blaring away. Our next participant is the Minister, Mark Miller. We just received a message that there is added security on the Hill and they have to spend some time making their way to the Hill for question period. However, he's going to be, oh, there he is. He's going to be with us for a while. And him too, he'll have to maneuver the big trucks. Please give him a Keeseekoose Treaty 4 welcome, Mr. Mark Miller, our Minister.
Thank you, Eugenia. Anin Buju Tanse, hello. I am, as Eugene mentioned, joining you today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I want to express my deepest respect and gratitude to Chief Lee Kichimunia, Regional Chief Cameron, and all members of the Keeseekoose First Nation for allowing me the privilege of joining you today on this occasion. Thank you, National Chief, the Lieutenant Governor, to witness these devastating findings and frankly, to witness Canada's ongoing shame in the face of these findings. The painful legacy of Fort Pelly and St. Philip's residential schools, institutions, is a deeply personal tragedy for you, for Keeseekoose, surrounding communities who had their children ripped away, and experienced by all communities, Indigenous communities across Canada. Today is a painful reminder of the abuse and the lasting pain inflicted on so many children, their families, and their communities. We're reminded by the knowledge keepers of the horrific realities that you experienced in residential schools. Not only were children forcibly taken away from their families, but tragically, many didn't return home. None of those children will have known the richness of your culture or grown up surrounded by the love and support of your families and communities. I can't begin to imagine, frankly, the hurt and sadness and questions that this search and discovery has will bring up and will trigger in people. I want to acknowledge first and foremost the strength of the knowledge keepers in their testimonies today, and all of the communities who are specifically dealing with this incredible, painful revelation or a truth you already knew, and frankly, the important work that needs to be ongoing and continue towards accountability and, as was mentioned today, closure. Canada will respect the wishes of your leadership and all the communities carrying this burden to uncover the truth and work towards, as I mentioned, healing and closure. Canada remains committed to providing the supports as you undertake this work in your own way, according to your wishes and your community's wishes, and specifically families and survivors. As was mentioned by all of you and by the National Chief just now, the stories of these children must be remembered and honored, and the families deserve the truth so they can work towards that closure that I spoke about, and Canada will continue to support you on that journey. I want to take these last fleeting moments to honor the survivors, the knowledge keepers who have today and before courageously and now continue to speak out. And I do want to take a small moment to extend my greatest respect to those survivors who do continue to suffer in silence. And finally, in the face of continued efforts in this country to deny the truth, and it shouldn't have to be said, but I feel it does, to survivors and your families, I believe you, and Canada believes you. Miigwech.
Hey. Thank you, Minister Miller. Thank you for being a part of our historic day. And we wish you safe travels across Turtle Island as you visit our treaty territory. I'd now like to call up a member of the Fishing Lake First Nation. She is, as far as I know, the first woman treaty commissioner. I know for our province, but I'm not sure about the country. But it doesn't surprise me that Saskatchewan would be the, oh, Keeseekoose First Nation. Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Mary. But she's from your nation, and give her a nice welcome, your Treaty Commissioner, Mary Cuthbertson. Sorry.
Ani indigenous Mary Culbertson from Musqueam. I am from Keeseekoose, the Musqueam family. I am the first woman treaty commissioner in Saskatchewan and the first indigenous woman treaty commissioner. I'm the first lawyer from Keeseekoose, but I hope to not be the last. I'm very humbled to be asked to come home, to be here today with my mom, my spouse, and my family, my uncle, my cousins, and my aunties. It's a very somber day. You don't know whether to clap sometimes or sit there shaking because you hope to have the strength to be able to talk about these things. And growing up here, you know, you'd hear the stories, right? Our oral history. You knew places you couldn't go play along where that teacherage used to be. Don't look outside at night because we were always scared of where that playground was and how you'd feel looking at it. Or walking someone home across the road from the teacherage to behind the rink and you'd hear a baby crying in the bush. Those horrible stories like that I remember when we were kids. I didn't go to residential school. My mom went. My cookum went. My Mrs. father went where his name was changed. And that's how we have the name Musqueam spelt in a French way. They changed our names. They took our languages. And our three nations here, our chief of Cody and their counselors and our neighbors at Keys and our relatives, our leadership is all sitting here. The graves in our three reserves are full of the consequences of these schools. And those graves keep getting filled. In my job, I have to teach about the treaties. And the one thing I always try to make sure people understand is that the residential schools were born from broken treaty promises. Those were breaches of treaty. Instead of getting a schoolhouse and a teacher on every reserve, we got residential schools because they were cheaper. Because they could assimilate us. They could take our culture and our language. They took lives and didn't care. They called us savages. Today, we hold our children dear to our hearts. We wouldn't let anybody hurt them. And sometimes lots of us aren't capable of looking after our children because we inherit a legacy we didn't want to. And we see that evident in these communities with our addictions. Anybody can Google Kamsack, Keeseekoose, Cody, Key, and what they're gonna find is about our opioid crisis. They're gonna find out about our addictions, our high rates of death. All of that is directly from these residential schools. We have to bury our children. And that's not something our grandparents or our ancestors wanted when they entered into treaty. Our office does research, and we've been working with different dioceses and churches on getting research for some of the Treaty 10 schools, for St. Anthony's School. And sometimes we come up against barriers that are just unbelievable. And as a lawyer, I know those barriers are not legal. And it's still a struggle. So I'm glad Bishop Boland's here today because we have some talking to do later about one of those barriers we're coming up against. We have the only treaty archives in all of North America, maybe the entire world. And we get requests constantly for people looking for either their identity through their status, because that was taken away from them. We are the only people in this country who have numbers attached to us. Mine is 3670108201. We still have numbers. In what country, in what world is that okay? And in having to sit between my people and the crown, it is a very difficult role. Like our Lieutenant Governor or my friend Russ Marassi said, it's very hard to take that decision to take this role or not, because you sit between your people and you're a representative of the Queen. But here we are today. We're two First Nations people who 150 years ago, when the people in our positions were the ones negotiating the treaties. It was lieutenant governors and commissioners negotiated these treaties. And we hope that today we can make those things right that the men before us did wrong. On behalf of my family, my home, my children, thank you for inviting us here today. My aunts, my uncles, I love you. My cousins, our elected leaders, our chiefs, we know how we're all related. I'm very sorry that we have to be together on this day. I hope to come home after the pandemic to have a celebration, not to mourn 54 graves. With that, may wish.
Hi, Treaty Commissioner Mary Culbertson from Keeseekoose First Nation. I'm going to deviate from the program a little bit, just a little bit, by asking my fellow residential school survivors, who are many times the forgotten people in this crazy life that we live, to please stand for a few minutes. Stay standing, all residential school survivors. And I want to do this because our treaty commissioner is from this nation and I made an error, and I want to correct that. I want to ask all residential school survivors to please stand. We have asked the lead singer for the Soto Feather Singers to put down 5 drum beats, same as we do in our ceremonies, in your honor, in our honor, in honor of our schoolmates and our classmates that didn't make it home. Treaty Commissioner Culbertson, this is a lesson from you. Junior. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll put a nice round of applause for the forgotten people. Residential school survivors. Hi. Let's go now, Rapier. Now I'd like to call up representing the bishops of Canada today. One of the people behind the scenes of bringing the Pope to our country to do the right thing. Today you are witnessing reclamation. Yeah, nice round of applause for Bishop Boland. Today we are witnessing reclamation while everybody's talking about reconciliation. And Ted talked about conciliation. There are 4 R's that the Pope has to be reminded of as he makes his journey over here. It's reclamation, repatriation, reparation, and restitution. All of that comes before reconciliation. With that, Bishop Boland, welcome.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you all. To begin, I want to acknowledge in a special way the survivors who have spoken, many in their own languages. We need to hear your stories. And I acknowledge the intense emotions that many of you feel today. And I acknowledge how you have suffered. As Ted has said, we have been working over the past months meeting regularly, reflecting on how the church can walk in solidarity with you in the pursuit of real conciliation. That begins with an apology, not from survivors, from church, from government. And we are profoundly sorry for the role that Catholics played in the schools and the abuse that you suffered, and the racism and the intergenerational trauma. We are sorry, profoundly sorry. But we recognize and are reminded repeatedly that apologies are a beginning, not an end, and that what we need is a new kind of engagement. As Ted said, next steps which have to be real. That's why we've been working on this with the voice of survivors in the lead, giving us direction about how we can walk with you in a good way. So in consultation with our working group, I've written a letter to Chief Ketchimonia and identified some of the areas where you are inviting the diocese and the local church to walk with you in terms of gaining as much understanding as possible of what happened at the schools, in terms of records, in terms of education and conciliation needed at all levels of our communities, church and society. So thank you for inviting me here today to be present as you live this difficult moment. And thank you for the inspired leadership which you are giving at Keeseekoose. And thank you to the survivors for the real vision you carry for moving forward for conciliation. Miigwech, thank you.
Hi, Bishop Boland, thank you for being here, and I wish you as I was saying, Bishop Boland, a message to Bishop Lavoie. We know that he's an ally who has worked tirelessly between the seasons to bring the Pope over here along with you. So thank you to both of you. And I do have some quick adjustments to the agenda, which we will adhere to, but I have a note here for Mr. Bill Cashane. His son brought me this. Mr. Cashane is 95 years old. He sends greetings today to all of you here. Recently, he's on the home stretch, and he wanted to pass at home. So today he's at home, and he sends along a message along with a story that if I have a chance, I will share it with you. But for those of you who are descendants and related to Mr. Bill Cashane, he's here with us in spirit, even though he's not here in body. With that, I turn it over to Mr. Bobby Cameron, who's going to be joining us by Zoom. And as he's coming in on Zoom, I want to introduce the chief, not only as the chief of the DFSIN, but also the son of the late Bobby Cameron, one of my classmates at St. Michael's School from 1958 to 1967. Chief Bobby Cameron.
Yeah, thank you, Eugene, and for emceeing and being a part of this journey for many, many decades. Amagwanes noago magantik, nigan mantu, kanaskamon, niogisagom megwats, negwa kiteyak, itino, naskumtino, ipito ataros pagana, igagisamuan, igagismosmo. Kakyoe itaguti, ipikskwe, nagatoke askayak, chasamsak, awasasak, nagatoke. We thank our God, our Creator, for a beautiful day, to our knowledge keepers for the pipe ceremony and the prayers and the drum group, Chief Lee Kitchimoni and your council, and the survivors, Chief George Cody and your council, key leadership that are in the room, and all the previous speakers before me, all made some really good recommendations and comments. I'm going to be very brief because all the comments that were shared prior were all critical and important and vital in moving forward. We've traveled to many residential school sites, sat, listened, and learned from the survivors and their families. And some of the recommendations going forward is a couple of key things that we took away. And one of them is this: if they can spend X amount of dollars building these residential school sites, they can spend the same amount building healing and wellness centers right at those sites. They can bring those to justice who have harmed our children. That was an item, an action item. They can continue to help heal and restore that faith that many of the survivors are still waiting for. They can restore and return those records directly to the survivors, the descendants, the families, and communities where it rightfully belongs, so we can continue to put the pieces of the puzzle together. The Pope will have to and must apologize at a residential school site within our treaty territories. These are some of the recommendations we have heard, and of course there'll be others, but they're all important. You know, we would like to also say to each and every one of you for continuing your journey. Those children that have been discovered recently, and all those loved ones who left before, are looking down and saying, finally, they believe us. Finally, our people can have a proper burial in their own protocols and traditions. Be it the Anishinaabe or the Dene Sontlin, or the Woodland Cree, the Swampy Cree, the Plains Cree. The Dakota, the Nakotas, and Makotas, all of us are family. So it's important that we continue to support and stand with all survivors and their families moving forward. This has been our commitment from day one. It'll continue to be. Back in Muir East, we held this in the summer, and it was a place where my late dad had attended the residential schools. You see our survivors, they give us gifts. In their own little way, they still manage to give us gifts. The gifts of oral teachings and oral stories. Those things can never be taken away from any government. Those things can never be taken away from anybody who wants to do harm to us, because it's here and it's here. We never forget. We always remember. This is what drives us as treaty people, as Indian people. Keeseekoose and surrounding communities, again, thank you for your work you've done. Lieutenant Governor and others, Mark Miller, I know your staff is listening on a line. They had to leave, but thank you for being here as well. Let's continue to walk this walk together. Those unborn that are coming up behind us depend on us to give them a better life, to give them a life where they're going to succeed, knowing that they're loved, they're happy, and they're not going to be abused in any way, shape, or form. Those are our words on behalf of the FSIN, our vice chiefs. Dutch Sarah, who is also a survivor. Ali Bear, Heather Bear, and David Pratt, our veterans, our elders, our Women Council, Youth Council. I can honestly say this, we can honestly say this. We love each and every one of you. You guys are our friends, and we respect each and every one of you. Hi, Exit.
Hey, thank you for being with us, Chief Cameron. Let's have a couple of additions to our agenda. We know it's been a long morning, but bear with us. It's very important that we do the right thing on this one opportunity we get to do this in this community. Earlier, you met our National Chief, Roseanne Archibald. You met, and she couldn't make it, Governor General Mary Simon. Treaty Commissioner Mary Culbertson. And now we have the tribal chief of the Yorkton Tribal Council, Isabella Soup. A nice round of applause for Tribal Chief.
Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. I don't know, I must look short. He put the mic way down. I turn it up. I want to acknowledge our elders, everyone who said our prayers for this community today. Acknowledge our drum group, the leadership. Mary, for always your honest, heartfelt words. I want to offer condolences to this community on behalf of the other nations within Yorkton Tribal Council. And I didn't realize I was sitting next to an ally, one of the bishops. I wanted to give him rib shots when I found out he was the bishop. Then I realized he was an ally, and I said, I better apologize now. I'm speaking truthfully. I want to encourage all of our young people in the room and in our communities and our schools and everywhere. I want to encourage them to learn the history of Canadian government and First Nation people. I encourage them to learn that that we don't forget, that Canada doesn't forget. And once we learn our history, then we get empowered. I think it brings us empowerment to know what our people have been through so that we don't have to carry shame anymore, and that we can be empowered by learning that this is the reason, the way we are, that it's not our own doing, and that we're survivors. It's great to hear you say stand up survivors. It's great to see our survivors in our communities and that their children, we're all survivors. So I want to encourage our young people to learn your history. We have a great program at the Tribal Council. It's not a program, but it's like, it's called the Kairos Blanket Exercise. And I always tell people, if you want to learn the history, take the Kairos Blanket Exercise. It's not just for First Nation people, it's for everybody. We take it all over, all across Saskatchewan and Canada. Our residential school department as well sought after to come and do that project, or the little, for a lot of organizations. They were in North Battleford a couple of years ago before COVID hit, and they were doing, and North Battleford is like the Kemsack area. They have a lot of relationship building to do over there, and they were there. They were there for judges, and they were there for the police and for the Crown prosecutor. So it's a start. After September 30th in Yorkton, when we had we call it the Orange Shirt Walk, we had probably over 500 people at that walk. And I think our communities and the non-First citizens of Canada have opened their eyes. And it's unfortunate, but it's all the uncovering of the unmarked graves that made people open their eyes and they realize that what our survivors have been saying all along is the truth. And it just makes that much more of an impact on them. So we had over 500 walkers to bring awareness and support and condolences. It's all we walked Broadway in Yorkton, and we walked to City Park, and we had survivors tell their stories. And it was really surprising to see that probably 70% of the people stayed to listen to their stories. So if you have opportunity, listen to their stories and hear them. It's a way of their healing as well. After September 30th, I don't think we should be just recognized one day out of the year. I went on our the Facebook page and encouraged all organizations that every Friday we are, we have organizations within City of Yorkton that are not only recognizing survivors on September 30th, but every Friday of every week of every day. And I encourage everybody else to do the same here. We don't just want to recognize one day out of the year. We don't want to be forgotten. We don't want that to be forgotten. So again, I just want to say condolences to everybody in this room, because we know Cody, Keith, we've all been affected. We've all been affected by it, and just encourage you to learn, and pass on that knowledge as well. So it's hard to be the last speaker before lunch. So I'm going to say Jimmy Great.
Hi, Tribal Chief Isabella Soup. Thank you for not only for being here, but your continued support. And our last presenter this morning, but certainly not the least, another young man I've seen grow up throughout his life. I'd like to ask him to make his way up here. He's the chief of the neighboring First Nation, and with Cody and Keeseekoose and Key, there's really no separation there in terms of families. And I'm so proud of this young man to now have been selected as a leader of the Cody First Nation. Chief Cody, George Cody. Hi.
Hey, wait. George Cody, Keeseekoose, Keeseekoose, Cody First Nation. I'd like to acknowledge our pipe ceremony that I participated in this morning, that we just got the day prepared for this time. And to acknowledge the drum group as well, and the flags that are hanging, and all the delegates that are here today right across Canada. Acknowledge the elders, the chief and his council, the survivors of Keeseekoose First Nation, and most importantly, the children that are sitting in front here that are representing the future of our generation. I really appreciate my council and my elders and the survivors as well, and the children of our community, and also for T First Nation. We're the three communities that are here together. And St. Philip's Residential School had a lot of our own members as well coming to our neighboring community here. And, to hear the stories that they've spoken, it's heartbreaking to see how we were treated and still being treated today. In the spirit of the treaties that we signed with the Crown, was supposed to be a relationship with the Crown. Treaty right to education wasn't the government giving the religious groups the money to establish these schools in our communities, and taking our children away from our parents and our grandparents, which is having a generational effect as we speak today. The school that we're in now, this is a treaty right to education. Our kids get to go home. We don't have to worry about them dying in this school. Our mothers and our grandmothers from past generations, I could not imagine the effect it had on them when their child did not come home. And I really appreciate all the work that's being done by Ted and his group here. And also, we are going to be doing a ground search at the Crow Stand Indian Residential School that was just east of Kamsack. A part of land that was a part of Cody First Nation, but it was surrendered. And I would say we never surrendered our children. I really appreciate our elders and our pastors of the three communities, with the ceremony, to move forward and to forgive and to start healing. Talked about forgiveness here, and forgiveness is is hard, at times, and I really like the words that we had, my friend said, Eugene, we don't have to apologize. We just got to continue to be healing. My mom doesn't even talk about residential school. I asked her once, and she said, I'd just like to leave it behind. I don't want you guys going through that, she said. So we're all connected one way or another. And you can see the results of what it done to us, how it affected us in all ways of addictions, how we are trying to heal as a nation and to bring our communities back into a place of restoration and where we feel comfortable with the future with our children and the leadership sitting at the tables, along with the guidance of the elders, that we do move forward. And we thank you for the people that are helping us out at not only our level, but the tribal council level, the SI level, and the AFM level, and the United Nations level. The world is starting to acknowledge what the Holocaust that we went through was, the genocide. I'm really encouraged by the stand that the people that are telling their story. How painful it must be, but to release that anger and that bitterness in their hearts, to acknowledge, that they are a person as well. Every child matters. And that's what we always talk about. Every child matters. Not only today, but every day. And I thank our band member, Isabel, bringing, world, international attention to her being proud of her heritage, wearing the ribbon skirt. Our children are opening their eyes. Our children are starting to realize, what our grandparents and parents and great-grandparents are going through. They're starting to bring forward their voice so that their children, when they get older, that curse will be removed from the memories of our hearts. I stand here just thanking the Creator for bringing this to light, bringing everything to truth, reconciliation. I'm really proud of my people in the Cody First Nation as we slowly move towards that unity that we always talk about, and acknowledging our past leadership, our past chiefs, our past counselors, our elders that have passed on, wanting that vision where we don't have to no longer live in fear, but to be thankful for the life that we were given from the Creator, and to be part of this nation within a nation. So I just wanted to share that and, keep praying, keep loving one another, keep acknowledging one another. We're starting to have steps moving forward with the town of Kamsack, where we want to work with the schools as well, since our kids are attending their schools, to understand one another, to understand each other's culture, and to make this a better place to live, which will happen one day. So Tami Gwich.
Thank you, Chief George Cody. Always a good neighbor, and I have to say, George, Chief Cody, I wish you all the best in the coming little while on the Crow Stand Indian Residential School findings. Again, it's not going to be easy, but we'll be with you. I just want to clarify a couple of issues. There have been some requests for some people to share a story. And unfortunately, we don't have the time to do that today. The program is running a little longer than expected. And we know that there are diabetics in the room, and we want you to share a meal in a little while in each other's company. So my apologies for that. I also want to clarify for the media that right after we finish our protocol with our honor song and our victory song, that the media conference will move into the resource center. They'll be waiting there for you. And ask all of those who made a presentation today to make themselves available in the resource room for one-on-one with the media. With that, I'll call on Chief Kitchemonia to do the final part of our program before we call on the Soto Feather Singers to close off our program. Chief Kitchemonia.
Thank you, Eugene. Well, we're just about to a close here, but I'd like to thank everybody for sitting through and listening to the stories. We've come to the time now where I'd like to give thanks, and I'd like to give some gifts. I'm just waiting for my Eunice. Do you have the list? Okay. Sorry about that. It's our culture that we give gifts to our visitors and speakers that come to our communities. So with that, I'd like to give the first blanket I'd like to give to our MC, Mr. Eugene Arcan. Eugene's a very good man. I met him quite a few years ago, and he's a very stand-up guy. And if something's wrong, he'll tell you right away. Thanks for that, Eugene. The second one I would like to offer a gift to is Mary Culbertson, Treaty Commissioner Mary Culbertson.
Oh, you want to put it on me? Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for coming, Mary. It's an honor to have you here. Come home as well. Next one is Ted Stronkel. As you all know, he's my father-in-law. I have a lot of respect for this man here. He's a very good father-in-law, a very good friend. He taught me lots through the years, so thank you, Ted. Next one is Isabella Soup, Tribal Chief Isabella Soup. Thank you, Tribal Chief. Chief George Cody, our neighboring community, Chief George Cody. Snagging blanket, get the Lieutenant Governor, Honorable Russ Moracity. Bishop Bolin. Clinton Key, representative from Key First Nation. This one's not a snagging blanket, he said, so he wanted to make that very clear. Cuthbert Kashane. Stella Ketchamonia, my mother. Sarah Janai. And last but certainly not least, okay, I want to give this one here to our coordinator for a lot of things is Ted Keeseekoose. He's a former chief, a senator as well. He's been a leader in our community for many years. He's also a very, very good friend of mine and mentor. I have a lot of respect for this man here, so thank you very much for everything, Ted. Okay, all right, well that concludes our gift for today. So, all right, I'd like to hand the mic over back to Eugene Arkan.
Thank you, Chief. And I'd like to commend all those that received a gift in our way. We're going to, again, remind the media that there'll be a media conference either for Q&A and or one-on-one in the resource center. We in here will continue our protocol. We're going to end off our program with a honor song to honor not only those who are in this room, but the people who we are commemorating, the missing children in these unmarked graves and the ones that never made it home. After that, we're going to have a victory song. And I had a discussion with the boys before.
Hey, bring that.
And they were having some problems with, do we do a victory song today? And I insisted that we do a victory song. The victory song is, we are here. We're resilient people. Everything was done to get rid of us. Everything continues to be done to control us. And we're no longer going to put up with it. And that's why we have to have this victory song in honor of those that have left us, in honor of those who are here in this room, but most importantly, in honor of our children and our grandchildren and our chapans, who we all hope doesn't have to live the lives we did with the childhoods lost. With that, Soto Feather, honor song. If you can rise, please do. victory song. As we close off this program today with this victory song, I want to encourage all of you to shake hands, give a fist pump, and if you feel comfortable in this time of COVID, give each other a hug, something we're not allowed to do in residential school. We encourage you to enjoy your meal, share each other's company, enjoy the room, enjoy the space. It is a safe space. The Chief Kitchemonia and his council, I just want to say, on behalf of my wife Lori and I, we are so honored to have been a part of this historic day. Son,